On my end. All right, so welcome everyone. My name's Caitlin Bear, and I'm going to be hosting today's Lunch and Learn on behalf of the ICA Pedagogy Committee. I'm really excited to welcome David Krakauer as our guest for today. He's going to be speaking about his very unique path as not only a clarinetist and educator, but as a composer, band leader, entrepreneur, and an innovator in the world of klezmer. So just a bit about David. He received a Grammy nomination in 2015 as a soloist with the conductorless chamber orchestra of Fard Cry. He began his journey with the music of his Eastern European Jewish cultural heritage at the end of the 1980s as the Berlin Wall was falling. And inspired by these massive cultural shifts, he began to explore klezmer music as he sought to connect with his Jewish identity in a deeper way. He became a creator in his own right, first as a member of the groundbreaking band The Klezmatics, then as an integral part of John Zorn's radical Jewish culture movement, and ultimately as a composer, soloist, and band leader in the klezmer genre. His wide array of projects, solo appearances, and multi-genre collaborations includes ensembles, conductors, composers, and many individual artists. His discography contains some of the most important clarinet recordings of recent decades, including the Dreams and Prayers of Isaac the Blind with Osvaldo Golijov and the Kronos Quartet, and the 12 Tribes, which was designated Album of the Year in the Jazz category for the Preis der Deutschen Schallplattenkritik, and Paul Moravec's Pulitzer Prize-winning composition Tempest Fantasy. Most recently, Krakauer has been co-composing a number of large-scale works with Kathleen Tagg, including a fantasy for concert band, a clarinet concerto commissioned by the Santa Rosa Symphony, the Eugene Symphony, and the Adele and John Gray Endowment Fund, and the score for Mignon by filmmaker Eric Steele. For the past 25 years, Krakauer has been an artist and endorser for the Selmer, Paris, and Conn-Selmer companies. As an esteemed educator, David Krakauer is on the clarinet and chamber music faculties of the Manhattan School of Music, the Mannes College of Music, the New School, and the Bard Conservatory, and teaches annually at the Accademia Chichiana in Siena, Italy. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you.
All right, so we will allow folks to post questions in the chat. So if you have a question, go ahead and do that, and Jessica will remind me of that. But I wanted to start off with a question of my own because David is a former teacher of mine. So I'd love to hear about your first exposure to the clarinet. So who were some of your first teachers, and what did you take away from your very early days of playing and studying the clarinet that really influenced your teaching later on?
Um, I started to play the clarinet when I was 10 years old. I had an opportunity to study at my elementary school, PS6 in New York City. And my first teacher was a gentleman named Joel Press, who was a clarinetist and saxophonist. And he was an amazing person. He just died a couple of years ago. But we remained friends through all the years. And Joel was incredible because he hosted jam sessions at his house in Boston, and they were so frequent that his home became known as the Institute by local jazz musicians in Boston who would come by to play. So Joel was incredible, and he would make statements like, "Oh, you never heard Charlie Parker unless you heard him live." So that was really quite something. And then um, after studying with Joel, when I was about 15, I started to study with Leon Rushnoff when began high school. I was at the High School of Music and Art, and that was an incredible experience because I was playing jazz and classical. I was playing with an ensemble led by the composer pianist Anthony Coleman, and we were doing jazz repertoire at that time, way before a lot of other people have done that. And so we were doing everything from Jelly Roll Morton to Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk was still alive. I got a chance to hear Monk live when I was a kid, and also some of the great legends of jazz, Papa Joe Jones, the drummer with Count Basie from the 1930s, and um, you know, countless incredible people, Sonny Rollins, Lucky Thompson, real giants, the Duke Ellington band. Duke Ellington was still alive, so that was really an incredible experience. And I was
Shadow
studying.
of the computer. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, um, I was studying with Leon Rushinoff, and Leon was incredible because when I came to study with him, my mom was a classical violinist, and she said, "Mr. Rushinoff, our boy is playing jazz. He's playing saxophone, and we're really concerned about him. We don't want him to ruin his clarinet embouchure." And Rushnoff just said, uh, it's a really tough market out there, and your son should be as flexible as possible and have as many options open to him as possible. And that proved prophetic, actually. And I really credit Rushinoff with his openness. And I studied with him for 9 years through high school and college, and at Juilliard uh, for my master's. And Rushinoff was really, really just such a wonderful um, mentor to me. And um, the fundamentals with Rushnoff were just incredible. He had a pocket full of little techniques that he taught us, and basically he taught all of his students how to teach themselves and how to practice in an organized way. And so I remember the summer after my first year with Rushnoff, I went to the Bowdoin summer program at Bowdoin College, run by the Aeolian Chamber Players. And I was basically practicing the clarinet 6 to 8 hours a day, taking all the Rushnoff techniques. And that's when I consider that I became a clarinetist, a competent, starting to get onto the road of really being able to play the instrument.
Yes, I remember the fulcrum technique very well, like in our lessons,
Yep.
that's distinctly Russian off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fulcrum, beat to beat, add a note,
Mhm.
and he had it was kind of a marketing, he labeled everything. So he said, "Yeah, this is add a note. I call it ironing now because it's going up one note, going back, going up two notes, going back, da 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 dee, da da, etc. Just going and sort of ironing out and making the passage as smooth as possible. And of course, it's tricky to do, and it will expose little glitches or technical problems or blockages, and then you could say, oh yeah, all right, I can work on that a little bit more. So yeah, the Rushnoff techniques are, oh yeah, prepared fingers, one of the great ones. I don't think he invented it, but Rushnoff taught about I would say he taught about 50 students a week, and he was just there in his studio on 48th and Broadway, little Times Square, four-story building that's been torn down, 1595 Broadway. But for anybody who studied with Leon Rushnoff, that's a legendary address. And he was there just teaching and teaching, and so he learned so much from his students who brought in different techniques, brought in different fingerings, and he was he was a collector of 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 pedagogical materials, and then he passed them on to his students, of course.
And Jessica just noted in the chat that the Clarinet Journal just reprinted Rushinoff's article, "The reed is dead, long live the reed," which is a phrase I heard from you first in lessons. Uh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
that was one of my favorite articles. It was great.
hmm
Yeah,
hmm
yeah.
Does anyone have any questions you can put in the chat? If not, we can go to something else. So you've had, kind of pivoting a bit, you've had a really multifaceted career, of course, and as you said, your Rushinoff was kind of prophetic, and maybe forecasting what you would go on to do and all the genres you would go on to perform in. So, what advice would you give younger musicians who have a really wide range of musical but also artistic interests?
Yeah, I would say, I guess the title of this session is Follow Your Instincts, Follow Your Heart. And I think that's very, very important. If you say to yourself, oh, I really want to play jazz, then go for it. Go for it and do it. Uh, I think that it's very important uh, for a musical artist to really display their passions, but whatever you decide to do, whether you are pursuing principal clarinet or any kind of a job, second clarinet, bass clarinet in a symphony orchestra, or whether you're pursuing a teaching career, anything you do will enhance the experience of your the workplace that you end up in, or your career that you end up in. So I think it's really really important to pursue your passions, um, and you never know where they're going to lead you. So, for example, when I was playing jazz, and then in my early 20s, kind of during my Juilliard time, getting my master's, I abandoned jazz and improvised music because I kind of felt like, oh, I don't know if I can really live up to these lofty this level, incredible level of creativity. My idols, for example, Sidney Bechet. When I heard Bechet when I was 11 years old on a record, and I heard that sound, I said, "Wow, this is what I want to do." It's so singing, it's so passionate, it's so full of life. Um, and people like Bechet, like Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Coleman Hawkins, Johnny Hodges, these great, great titans of music. And I thought, wow, well, they really have an individual voice that you cannot mistake for anybody else. And I felt at the time in my early 20s kind of incapable of finding that. So I abandoned jazz, and I did a 10-year career in New York as a New York freelancer, doing all kinds of stuff, contemporary music, orchestral music. I was principal clarinet in the New Haven Symphony for 4 years. I did the music for Marlboro tours. Um, I was in the Aspen Wind Quintet, which won the Naumburg Chamber Music Award. I was going for solo opportunities, so I won the Concert Artists Guild Award, and that was a very important moment for me. And so all of these things, pursuing this classical career, but then in my early 30s, suddenly I said to myself, oh wow, I threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I was kind of like, I miss improvising. I miss off the page uh, creativity. And so then, kind of around that time, it's funny how you put an energy out into the world. And I put this energy out into the world, and I was searching, and uh, I was attending concerts that were put on by the Balkan Arts. I think it was called, now it's called the Center for Traditional Music and Dance. It was called the Balkan Arts Center, at that time. And so, I heard Ivo Papazov, the great Bulgarian clarinetist, for his first performance in New York, and hearing Albanian and Greek and Macedonian clarinet players, and I was just so excited to hear all that music, and so then right around that time when I was exploring the different kinds of clarinet playing, suddenly an opportunity came up for me to play klezmer, Eastern European Jewish klezmer. And I thought to myself, wow, well, this is the music of my cultural heritage. And, um, this could be a musical home for me where I take all of the knowledge and experience that I had as an improviser, as a jazz improviser, and bring that into klezmer, but in a really organic way. Like I didn't want to paste klezmer music on top of jazz or jazz on top of klezmer, and so I was just studying klezmer, learning from old recordings of masters like Dave Tarras and Naftuli Brandwine, listening to those old records from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the primary source recordings, transcribing them, learning how to play them, learning how to do the ornaments, trying to really get inside the music. And then I started to allow, a sort of cross pollination to happen in myself and start to create my own style.
And this might be a good time to share the Neftuli Brandwine recording that you shared. Do you want me to play a little bit of that? It's one of your.
Absolutely, yes. Now
All
that
right.
that is called Funtaschlich, and that was recorded probably around 1923, 1924. And this is Neftuli Brandwine, who was one of the great traditional klezmer masters.
Okay, I'll pause it there. And Jessica also just posted in the chat a link to Neftuli Brandwine's discography. We actually do have a question in the chat. It's
Okay.
not about klezmer, but it's about practicing. So Heidi says, I'm a 65-year-old returning clarinet student after a 45-year absence. I'm
Mm.
4 months into my return to playing and loving it. What would you recommend for the best practice regime for me? I'm currently practicing 1 to 2 hours a day and want to maximize my time for the greatest progress.
Hard to say exactly. I mean, probably would be easier for me to evaluate, if I were able to hear you. Um, but I would say, get into the close scales, and doing that, do the scales slowly. That in the close book they have that one page of the majors and minors, and that's really a great page. I love that. And then you get into the scales and thirds and the arpeggios, and I would say if you're doing if you're able to do a couple of hours a day, you know start with the scales and start and get comfortable with that page of the close scales, and then the Russianoff technique, da 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 da, go from one beat to the first note of the next beat, and then the beginning of that beat to the first note of the next beat, so you connect very, and do it calmly. If you haven't played for many years, you don't want to stress out your muscles and get into any kind of a tendonitis situation. So just go very slowly and calmly, enjoy your sound, um, and break it up into little bits, one beat to the beginning of the next beat beginning to the next beat, and then say, oh, let me try a measure. And then you do one measure, and then you connect the one measure to the next measure, et cetera, et cetera. And then, when you're really comfortable with that page of scales, then I would say go on to the scales and thirds, the arpeggios, the diminished seventh chords, the dominant seventh chords. Close, I like the Behrman book, but Close book is just like everything all on one page. The thirds on two pages. The arpeggios, there are two pages of arpeggios. Um, do that. I think that's a great thing. And then choose a piece that feels doable for you. You don't want to run before you can walk. So I don't know what repertoire you might want to use, but maybe Saint-Saëns sonata or something just ease in gently.
So, staying on the topic of practicing for a moment, what does your practice look like these days? You travel a lot, you're touring, you're playing all over the world. Do you still have a practice regimen that you go back to?
I like playing scales, you know. I like playing scales slowly and calmly because we all get into things where, like, in the heat of the battle, we're like, just how can I say, we're just going for it. And then sometimes that creates little bad habits like, squeezing the fingers or something. So I like to play the scales really slowly and feel centered technically. So that's really helpful for me, the scales and the scales and thirds. Um, and then doing like long tones and really matching, playing a half step and really matching it, and you say like low E to F, does that sound matched and good, and then F to F sharp and F sharp to G, etc. Just feeling uh yeah, it's like stretching, before you exercise, you want to stretch. I should do that more. I sometimes just go right into the gym, but theoretically, one should stretch. And I think doing a nice, calm page of scales and doing that is a great routine, and because I'm often just my practicing is just like what I need to be doing, and so I'm practicing the my immediate exigencies that are coming up.
Right, it's kind of like practicing for maintenance or just project based practice. I find that, like, in my current position, I mean, I'm certainly not as busy as you, but I have a lot of teaching and administrative responsibilities, and I find myself like just practicing to prepare for the next thing. And I, like you, I find it really helpful to center myself and have a routine and feel grounded and go back to those fundamentals as you were talking about. Do you have specific practice strategies or a routine that you like your students to do?
Um, again, it's kind of the scales and thirds and the basic stuff. Um, I've been giving my students the Yettel Klarinettenschule, Volume 2, the Yettel Clarinet School, and that's kind of the scale book of scale books, because that, extends the range, to the highest notes, and it's a real workout. So those are good things to do, and uh, but generally, also with my students, they're very already, advanced students, already quite project oriented. Um, so, I'll say like, okay, what are you working on this week? And we might be following a concerto. But, sometimes, for example, practicing a really challenging orchestral excerpt, like Daphnis and Chloe, for example, is more time efficient than working on etudes. Etudes are great, but I think etudes sometimes tend to be more about pushing one's sight reading abilities forward. Like learning an etude fast. Like if you can learn a Jean etude in a week, and then, I love the progressive and melodic etudes volume 3 because, it starts in F sharp major and it goes to like D double flat major, which is C major, but it's like a complete brain, just like you go insane and you're going like, "Oh, yeah, I'm playing in C major, but I forgot offhand, but there are just some real brain teasers, and those really help one sight read better and gain more fluency. But then learning some of these really tough orchestral excerpts is quite time efficient, especially if you don't have that much time, but you're learning an etude. You're learning an excerpt and an etude, and you learn a concerto. That's also very, you know, pushes one's technique forward, and I think that's valuable.
Yeah. So Jessica has a question in the chat. Going back to klezmer now, she says, thinking about klezmer specifically, is there a method that you recommend that assists learning and practicing with the tonality, patterns, and ornaments? So maybe you could delve into, how, aside from listening to, the klezmer greats, how did you get started, and what were their methods? How do you help your students delve into this genre?
There's not really an organized method that I have. Basically, it's just transcribing, but transcribing, you can transcribe by slowing the recordings down, and there are lots of apps that can do that. You can slow it down at pitch, and then you can really get into, oh, what was Dave Tarras doing? How was he doing this trill? Where did he put this, what they call the krechts, the little notes between the notes, the little sobs? Um, you know, um, you can get a krechts by, let's say you play a D and an E, right? And then you just do, let's say, a ghosted open G. So you do da da, and you stop the ghosted note with your tongue, or you can just pick up uh, the third finger on the left hand. So da, and if you pick up the third finger on the left hand, da da, and that puts that little krechts. Or if you did, let's say, a G sharp, let's say you're decorating an A, you would do a G sharp, stop the tongue on the B, and then go to the A. So you do the half step below, whole step above, ghosted whole step above, and then the note. So you can try that with different notes and different fingering patterns to get those little sounds. But I think a real careful study of the recordings, slowing them down, listening very carefully. Um, when I when I was working on it, I didn't slow the music down. I mean, I think there's a great value to it, but I sort of resisted it for some reason. There were some cassette play. This is it. I was learning with a cassette player, so there were cassette players that would do that, but I would tend to just like literally press play, and then press rewind, press play, press rewind, and listen over and over and over until I got, um, you know, would get that little thing. I said, "Oh, that's really cool. What Dave Tarras or Neftuli Brandwine are doing," and then I would listen and, you know, check it out and try it again.
That's great. Yeah. And now I imagine it's so much more easier because, as you said, there's apps, and like on YouTube, you can just go to 50% speed or something like that. And
Absolutely, there's so much you
Mhm.
can do, and I mean the only thing that then, becomes a little bit of a trap is then, you could sound perfectly like Neftuli Brandwine, theoretically, and then so that's why I resisted doing it that way, personally, because I didn't necessarily um, want to just mimic those players. I wanted it to mutate organically. But that's just me. I mean, some people go like, "Oh, maybe I could copy it exactly, and I'd have a really classical klezmer style." So it's all good. It's all just what you want to, how you want to approach it.
Do you feel like that was essential in you finding your own voice and kind of carving your own path, like not truly mimicking, but trying things on your own, experimentation, things like that?
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm I'm glad I, you know, allowed allowed uh, the information I was taking in to then mutate. That's the best way I can describe it. Mutate into my own style. But it's interesting that when I first started playing klezmer, and I played a lot of weddings, um, because that to me was the way to really learn how to play the style. If you can get people up and dancing, you're doing well. So for example, we would play, and if we had the tempo just right, the first person who would stand up to dance would be the 80-year-old grandmother. And then suddenly the granddaughter stood up, and the two of them were dancing, and I think the grandmother took out a handkerchief, and the little girl was dancing, and then suddenly the whole room got up and started to dance. So if you could get that groove, I mean, that's all about music. Great music making is all about the groove and the rhythmic feel. You hear 1936 Count Basie, 1937, 1938, and what a groove they had. And that was, you know, the quintessential swing music. I mean, just how people could dance to that and really enjoy it. So I think that for me, that was really a wonderful thing to connect to dance, like that organic connection between music and dance. And that was one of the great joys of playing, and is one of the great joys. I still uh, will go and play a wedding, and usually I just come and play one massive insane horror set, and then and then and but that's such a great feeling, because I've had this over the years. I'm walking on the street, and there are people. They come up and they have children, and they go like, "Oh, you played at our wedding, and it was so great." And I feel like I was part of the life cycle, and part of their life cycle, part of the greater life cycle of just um, yeah, being part of those rituals and those important um, rites of passage.
Absolutely. And you have a great track called Wedding on the Cyclone. I want to play a little bit of that. I love this.
Sure.
I play in one of my classes, actually, my music appreciation class. We always play a little bit of this. And there's a great music video for it on YouTube as well. Everyone should check out. Maybe Jessica can post that. Do you want to speak briefly about Wedding on the Cyclone? This is with Mazel Tov Cocktail Party, right?
That's correct. Yeah, the band is now called Good Vibes Explosion, but that band was formed by my partner and I, Kathleen Tagg and I, and we it was during the pandemic, and we shipped people green screens, all to Montreal, to Binghamton. We were just It was totally insane. We transformed our apartment into a production studio, and we had so we put these. It started off basically. I sent a clarinet part with a metronome, basically with a click track. And then gradually we were starting to bring in all the other parts. So I filmed myself with the green screen playing. For all, we made 8 music videos because we were supposed to play a live concert, but that, of course, wasn't going to happen in November of 2020. So then we made these music videos to be at the live concert at Brandeis University, because, we weren't going to like stream something from our apartment, or do some kind of, sort of, there were so many videos like that. We said, hey, we'll rebudget some of the, we'll take some of the budget that was going to be for the hospitality, which was quite considerable, and put that into the production of these music videos. And so that's how that happened. And the band only met in person like a year later. And it was crazy. Like, let's say, my part came in, and then like the bass player added his part, and then Kathleen would do these micro edits to get everything really just exactly right. Music edits, but it was also with video, so it was super, super subtle. And then the next person coming in, and the next, and the next, and the next, and it was really a massive amount of work and a labor of love. But we're so proud of those music videos. And then we had this great editor, Michael McQuilkin, who was made music videos for Deutsche Grammophon, incredible editor. And then I found some found footage along with Kathleen. We found this old footage, and then it was crazy, and it was a lot of fun, but a lot of work. So then the Wedding on the Cyclone is basically a medley of Jewish wedding tunes, but pretty crazy, with the electric guitar doing some crazy stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I'm going to play a little bit of Wedding on the Cyclone. This is Mazel Tov Cocktail Party. Okay, I'll pause it there. It's so fun. And this is, yeah, quite a lengthy track too. It's fun. It really makes me want to get up and dance. And so Jessica posted that music video in the chat, and they have a bunch of other music videos on YouTube too. So you said that you're now called Good Vibes Explosion.
Yes, that's the name of the band now. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. We have another question in the chat from Heidi again. She's asking, would you discuss your instrument setup, your clarinet, mouthpiece, ligature, and reeds?
Okay, here we go. Well, I'm a Selmer artist. I've been playing Selmer clarinets for 25 years. Um, I work a lot in France. France is one of my major markets, if not my major market. Um, and Back then, 25 years ago, I had just had a television special made about myself for the Arte channel, which is like the French and German PBS. So things were really taking off actually rather quickly for me in France. I speak fluent French. I actually went to the Paris Conservatoire. Um, um, when I was 20 years old. So I said to myself, as soon as my feet touch French soil, I'm going to stop speaking English. So I am, quite fluent in French. I studied with Delacluse during that year, and so you've seen his name on etude books. And uh, yeah, that was really, really incredible. So then in the early 2000s, the Selmer Company said, we'd love for you to be an endorser, and it happened very organically and naturally. I was hanging out with the family, with Patrick Selmer, Jerome Selmer, Brigitte Selmer, and that's what I do love about the company. It is a family company. I feel like I'm part of their family. And, I was in Paris a couple of weeks ago and just went by and visited the showroom. And you should all go and visit the showroom when you pass through Paris. It's wonderful. So anyhow, I play Selmer clarinets. I play the Selmer Privilege clarinet, A, B flat, and bass. I play I don't play the E flat very much, but when I do, I have a recital, Selmer recital E flat clarinet, which I really like to play. It's a wonderful, wonderful E flat clarinet. Um, and I just love the sound and the resonance of the Selmer clarinet. Um, for my mouthpiece, I'm playing. Uh, um, well, for classical, I play an M30D, a Van Doren mouthpiece. That gives me the roundness that I need for classical music. And then I play a Clark Forbes San Francisco for the klezmer playing. Now, you should definitely try um, a Clark Forbes. They're really good mouthpieces, very, very responsive, has a lot of power. But I do have to say that the for me the klezmer mouthpiece journey was a trial and error kind of thing. Um, uh, because I think one has a sound. I think it's like you're trying to find a classical mouthpiece, and you try different things, and it has to fit for you. Everybody's mouth is different, teeth are different, body type, breathing apparatus. And so I think it's very, very individual. you know, I- it's. I remember having a lesson with Leon Rushnoff, and someone came into the person who was waiting in the next room for their lesson, and they came in, and I was leaving, and then they said, "Oh, you sound great. What mouthpiece are you playing on?" And Rushnoff got really angry. He said, "What do you mean? The guy just sounds great. Like, don't, who cares what mouthpiece he plays on?" And I was very sort of anti-equipment for the first, let's say, 20 years of my career. I just didn't really care that much. I thought, oh, okay, something works. Now as I teach more, and just I get more involved in the equipment. I'm more curious about different options for mouthpieces. Um, um, but so I do think it's important uh, to have that tool. If you have the response that you need, if you can play in tune, certain mouthpieces, I've bought mouthpieces and I made the mistake of not bringing a tuner with me, and then suddenly I go back home and I try to play it and it's a mile sharp and there's nothing I can do about it. The mouthpiece just plays sharp. So I think that we have to be careful selecting a mouthpiece that has a good center of pitch, um, that gives us what we need, the response, the flexibility, etc. If you're looking to play in an orchestra, you might want to find one kind of mouthpiece. And if you're playing jazz or improvised music or klezmer, you might want to find another kind of mouthpiece. I play two mouthpieces to give myself that sound. And I discovered that recording the Dreams and Prayers of Isaac the Blind with the Kronos Quartet. We did a test recording and I heard it and I said, nah, this isn't right. I was playing on my classical mouthpiece because I was kind of like thinking to myself, well, this is a classical piece, but it's influenced by klezmer. And then I switched to the klezmer mouthpiece, and the whole Kronos Quartet turned to me and said, wow, what did you just do? And then I realized that's my sound, playing klezmer, and it's important to always pursue that sound. A classical mouthpiece, it sort of puts guardrails in place, holds the sound a little bit more. Um, Not, that's also to say you should you should have equipment that in klezmer or improvised music that sounds good. It shouldn't sound just like chaos, like, oh, okay, now I'm playing jazz or klezmer or Bulgarian music or whatever, so now I can just let everything go to hell. No, I mean, it's really also, you've got to have a mouthpiece that gives you, you know, the control you need to do the music that you're playing. Um, Reeds, I've been playing ligaphone reeds. Also, um, Selmer has been making some great reeds. Check them out. Obviously, I play Van Doren Java's uh, tenor sax reeds for the bass clarinet. So I kind of uh, you know, uh, uh, doing a lot of different things with reeds, and that's been fun. Um, but Ligaphone makes a very nice reed, and if you don't know those reeds, you should check them out. And Selmer's recently getting into reeds, so check those out. And as far as I basically play Rovner ligatures. Um, but I also think sometimes I get into the mentality that the buck stops there. Like, I'm not going to get crazy about ligatures. Um, so sometimes I think on one of my mouthpieces I just play a stock ligature. Um, but again, it's your comfort. It's very individual. Some people will go like, "Wow, a ligature changed my life." Great, so go for it if that's your thing.
Yeah, I think often we're so in pursuit of, the perfect equipment, what is going to help me be most in tune and get that sound that we crave. But I think, as you're kind of alluding to, it's more about finding equipment that supports your voice and allowing you to have that control, but also freedom regardless of the genre you're playing in. Could you talk a little bit more about, you talked about this distinction between like the mouthpieces you use for klezmer versus classical. Can you talk more about the tone that you pursue, your kind of ideal tone? What are you going, what qualities of tone are you going for when you play these respective styles, classical versus klezmer?
Well, I have the sound in my ear for classical music that you know, I I grew up hearing in Rushnoff's studio, as a teenager, hearing some of his great um, students. Um, One of my great models is my teacher's teacher was Simeon Bellison, that was Rushnoff's teacher, and the Mozart Clarinet Quintet from 1937 is just gorgeous, and I love that sound that Bellison gets. I love Caruzak's sound. Um, um, these are you know from the I love to, well, I'm a big freak for um historical recordings, so like you know I'll listen to Furtwängler and Um, and then the Bernstein recordings of the Mahler symphonies from the early 60s are just absolutely incredible. That's pushing it in the historical end, but still in 1930s, 1940s, some of these great conductors, Bruno Walter, um, Furtwängler, etc., Toscanini. I learned so much from those recordings, and then similarly with the clarinet, I like listening to historical recordings. Um, it's in terms of tone, I just always did have that kind of model in my head of the very, very centered, very focused uh, sound uh, that I was hearing in the Rushnoff studio. Um, and then for in terms of improvised music, my models were the great New Orleans clarinet players, notably Sidney Bechet and Barney Bigard, and just the sounds that those musicians got, and the flexibility that they got, and the swing and the drive, the articulation and the power. Uh, you could hear the swing of the music just in their sound. You don't need the rhythm section. I mean, of course, you need the rhythm section, but when you hear any of the great players that I really look up to in that genre, and I think also in the klezmer genre of Naftuli, Brandwine, Dave Tarras, and other players of that generation, you can really hear the dance inside the sound. You hear Coleman Hawkins, you hear swing inside the sound, the way he inflects, the way he subtly manipulates the inner dynamics, the accents, the ghosted notes. Um, and I think in classical music too, if the clarinet sings like an opera singer, then you got it. That's a beautiful tone. Um, I think one of my favorite teaching words or teaching tools is the word hello, because if you have the natural decay of the note on hello, so da da dee da dee da da dee da 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 dee da hello. So the singer has words, but we can subtly manipulate the dynamics to make the sound sing. And if you're da 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 da, it's not singing. And then therefore you don't have a good tone. So a good tone is about trying to make a beautiful vocal tone, in my view.
Yes, I remember the hello approach as well, and uh, beginning a Brahms E flat sonata too. Thinking about the amabile quality. That's another point I remember from your teaching. So, you teach at a variety of schools. You teach really high level students. What do you look for? What qualities do you look for in prospective students?
Um, I I want to feel, that's complicated because there's different categories. Like sometimes someone comes in playing just they're like a formed young artist. They're everything is together, and then it's just like, oh, okay, this is great. This is gonna be just a fun, like, then I see myself more as a mentor, guiding the person through career choices, through repertoire choices, et cetera, et cetera. And then I could hear people who I'd say, like, wow, there's a lot of potential here. Um, and there are certain things that need to be, cultivated and worked on. but I think I want to feel like somebody is flexible and that I can hear their humanity when I hear an audition, that I can hear someone who has something to say, something to express, uh, and it isn't just regurgitating, um, you know, what their teacher told them to do, but rather is a thinking, feeling human being. And many times people come in and audition, and you can feel like, oh yeah, there's a person underneath this, but they just need to be unlocked. Maybe that's one of my specialties as a teacher. I try to unlock people, help people unlock themselves. Is maybe more a better way of putting it.
Absolutely. Okay. We have a few minutes left, about 5 minutes. Does anyone want to unmute and ask David a question or post it in the chat? Oh, Jessica says, can you recommend some of the works that you've commissioned to listen or perhaps learn? I personally worked on the Star years ago.
Oh wow, cool, cool. Um, y- there was a piece. I wouldn't say I commissioned it exactly, but I inspired the composer to write it. A young composer named Vlad Marhulitz, and there is a clarinet, wonderful clarinet concerto that he wrote. It's published by Schirmer. Um, the only problem is that there is not a piano reduction for that piece. Um, but it's recorded. You can look it up. Marhulitz, Marhulets, Vlad, Wlad, and uh, yeah, you can listen to it. I think it's available on YouTube. Yeah. So I think that's a wonderful, wonderful clarinet concerto. And of course, the Tempest Fantasy. I was part of that whole process, and that's a wonderful piece to play. That's very different. It's pretty much straight ahead classical composition. Um, and I have on my website, I've got some of the arrangements for clarinet and piano of klezmer tunes that Kathleen Tagg and I put together. So those could be fun, and I have suggested ornamentation, so you can kind of learn from that, or could be helpful. Um, yeah, yeah, and I really do recommend The Dreams and Prayers of Isaac the Blind. That's published by Boozy and Hawkes, and um, you know, that in conjunction with studying traditional klezmer and learning some tunes, and possibly even getting out there and playing a couple of Jewish weddings. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jessica posted your website in the chat, as well as links to your klezmer arrangements that you just mentioned, and
Great.
upcoming
Thank you.
performances, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, Jihyun is asking, what is the soul for slow klezmer music for foreign students?
Um, well, the one of the arrangements is Der Gassennigen, Gasn, a new word, Nign, and I think that's one of the musicians I played with said, "Wow, that's the St. James Infirmary of klezmer." So it's a beautiful, beautiful tune.
Yeah, you can hear that actually. That's on which album? On David Krakauer's Klezmer Madness, The 12 Tribes,
Yes, the
on
12
that album.
tribes, right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. Okay. Do we have any other questions before we wrap up? So check out David's arrangements. He's got so many albums he's recorded with various artists over the years. Um, his arrangements, his website, upcoming performances, a lot of opportunities to engage with his music here. So thank you so much to David for being our guest today. This is
Oh,
great to chat with you and connect again.
thank you, Caitlin. Great to see you and great to connect again, and great to see all of you. And yeah, keep on keeping on, keep on playing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. And thanks to Jessica Harry and the ICA for hosting this and the rest of the ICA Pedagogy Committee. Thank you, everyone. And this will be archived, I believe, on the ICA website for anyone who wants to watch the replay. All right.
Fabulous. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone. All
Thank
right.
you. Have a
Take
great
care.
one. Take
Take
care. Bye
care.
bye.